But as I said, you certainly look like you were doing, mate. No, that's at least a start, isn't it?
Got to look the part.
Yeah, it is. That's the start, and then you follow it through.
You know what I mean? Right, 220922.
You're live, you know that, don't you?
Oh, well.
Just giving away his codes. What's your bank account number?
Adrian's phone.
Oh, dear.
Dave, welcome to the Rise Above podcast, where we encourage to rise above in turbulent times, hence the reason why we're called Rise Above. Myself and Adrian were really keen to get you on, and we were really interested in how you become in the world of men's holistical health. So firstly, we'd like to know a little bit about you. I know we both know you in some respects, but I'm sure even Adrian will learn a bit about you that he didn't know tonight. So appreciate it for coming on and bearing all. We would love to know how, like, where you grew up, who you grew up with, how your school life was, etc., and then we'll go through the process.
Oh, perfect. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Great to be here, guys. I have to say, I've been on a few podcasts before. I've sort of done most of it like in different, from home, but maybe, abroad and things like that. But to have that kind of face-to-face meeting and to be with local guys as well, with that kind of local message, I really appreciate that. It looks like you do some great work already, I'm
still
sure.
Early days.
It's still early days, but I think already I see what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and it is admirable. And I'm sure you'll get even better at it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, it's probably not going to take that long, this first answer, because I've grown up in Letchworth all my life. Never been in any other town, really. And I suppose I've always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with Letchworth, but mainly love, I have to say. So when I look back, some people have these sort of traumatic experiences growing up and things like that, and I can't necessarily relate to that. I always had quite a steady family, parents really hard-working, always treated me well, gave me as much as they could and what I needed. 2 older brothers, they were always very protective and looked after me. We touched on a little bit about school, and I had a fairly good school experience.
What school did you go to?
Fernhill.
You went to Fernhill?
Yeah, I was at Fernhill. But, I was reasonably clever, but I couldn't really focus that much, and I never really enjoyed a lot of the lessons and stuff. I was very.
Was it the environment, or?
I don't know. Some of it didn't just. I just didn't relate to some of it. Certain things I liked history. I remember liking history and stuff, but certain things I didn't relate to, and I suppose I just found it more fun being a bit of the joker.
Yeah.
And we just touched on this, didn't we? Sort of, in school, how almost in every class we all could remember someone who was a bit annoying or a bit of a joker. I always talked up in class. I wasn't necessarily talking that much in class, but I'd always be giggling and just chatting in the back. That was kind of my thing. I sort of lacked a bit of focus, really. So that was kind of, I suppose, one of the sort of lesser sort of positive experience. Got myself in a bit of trouble. The old man weren't very happy with that.
Were your parents strict? Were they quite hard?
They were. I mean, my mum was probably more strict than my dad. And in traditional West Indian communities, usually the dad was the pretty much serious one, and he'd be handing out what we'd call licks. But that wasn't necessarily the case. Yeah, you still can relate to that, yeah. But my dad wasn't necessarily that person. My mum would, but I came a bit later as well, because I've got 2 older brothers who are 10 and 13 years older than me. So they often say I got away with murder. I'm the youngest one, came a bit later and stuff. So I get it quite positive. I probably got away with, a good few licks, as they would say. And I suppose the time when Letchworth, I didn't really enjoy Letchworth that much, was more when I was younger, sort of 15, 16, in your 20s, where you want to rave more, you want to go to the city, everything's bigger and brighter, and Letchworth's a bit boring, really. It's a bit old-fashioned, it's quiet,
It's a Quaker town.
Yeah, it's got that sort of history as well.
Let's be real about it.
Yeah, and at that sort of age, you didn't really... it just didn't really provide what you needed, really. So that's probably the only period of my life where I probably didn't really enjoy the town, as it were. But then as you get older again, probably as I got into my 40s, and you have children, and the children start growing up, and these places in the cities that you might like raving, you start realising living there is something completely different.
Yeah, definitely.
Some of the challenges and some of the environments. And you think, oh, hold on a minute, I think I'll let my children grow up in this environment, you know. So then you start to slowly fall back in love with lecture. You're not going out as much, you've got a nice little place. So you're more comfortable when you begin to fall back in love with the town. So a love-hate relationship, but mainly love, I would say.
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I had to live in London for a couple of years, and I absolutely hated living there. Do you know what I mean? Like you say, it's lovely to go out
To rave or something. Yeah, that's right.
Some food, or to just go and sightsee and stuff like that. But coming, you know, you always want to come back home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you ever sort of get that feeling when you come back home and it's like you see that welcome back to lecture sign? There's a bit of comfort there, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? And again, I don't know if that's just me getting a bit older.
No.
There's that comfort there, you know?
It's the home. It's that comfort feeling, isn't it? Of,
Absolutely.
And the relaxation of knowing that you're back home. Effectively, you're in amongst people that you know and who you feel comfortable with.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
very much.
Something I always tell my boys: when you go out of town, you make sure you respect the places you're going.
Yeah.
Because things could...
It's different rules and regulations sometimes, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Just going out in the local in Bulldog, you know?
Yeah, very much so.
So, growing up, you said you were kind of protected a little bit by your older brothers. You had a little bit of off spells at school, but nothing too major. Major or nothing like that. But when was it you started getting into the sports side of things? Were you quite athletic at PE? Did you like the cross countries and things like that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think most of the sports, certainly from school, from junior school onwards, really, I did enjoy and was fairly good at. You know, whether it was football, sort of running, hurdles was my thing, cricket, rugby. You know, I was generally quite sporty. And it's almost the opposite to some of the lessons that you talked about, because you were absolutely getting something from that. You were enjoying it, and whether it was just running around or competing as a team or competition against each other or getting props from the teachers or other pupils, being good at football, for example, that was quite a positive feeling, and you really enjoyed that. So, and my brothers were into sport and things like that, my older cousins and things like that. So you had some of them influence as well with sort of playing the back garden from, I don't know, whatever age. You know, pretend it's like Old Trafford 80, I'm afraid. I thought I'd have to drop that in there, you know, and scoring the winning goal in the cup final or whatever, you know.
It's Liverpool, though,
It absolutely would have been, because you've got to realise then it would have been the 70s, early 80s. So you guys were absolutely, you know, the absolute tops then. So to think, you know, you could have this sort of this dream of being this footballer, being a play for United and scoring the winner or whatever, you know. Even just playing on your own, used to enjoy that. So always enjoyed the sports, reasonably good at it. And I suppose that's what, to some extent, influenced the martial arts as well, because a little bit later, probably around 15 was when I started the martial arts, about 15, 16.
Was there a trigger to start the martial arts? What took you, because it's still quite a jump, you know, playing football, rugby, and like we all do that.
Yeah.
So what really was the jump, do you think?
Yeah, we don't all like getting beaten up.
Yeah. Well, there's something about martial arts and combat sport in particular. There is a certain mentality. There's no doubt about it. I think with the martial arts, there was a cultural side to it, as you can see here. There was that cultural side of it, because I think Bruce Lee being that kind of global cultural phenomenon, sort of his beliefs,
Everybody
and how he carried himself, and he didn't take no shit and stuff like that. There was so much of that I suppose I admired. And, you know, you're getting to that teenage years as well. Maybe I've got a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. You think it's absolutely genuine reason for it, but maybe you have a bit.
There was no element of self-defence or anything involved?
No. A lot of people, they do come to the martial arts through that and want to go and find someone to kill them eventually. But it was nothing like that. I think there was a little bit of protection in the sense of, you know, you have a bit of sort of abuse sometimes at a certain age, you know. And
well, I was going to say, you know, let's be real and honest about it. You grew up as well in a time where things were a little bit different, you know, and maybe, you know, you felt that you had to do that to protect, as you did walk around lecture sometimes.
Yeah, so there was a bit of that, but not much.
Yeah.
There was a bit of that sort of. There was no sort of tragic incident where you sort of took a bit of a beating or whatever, or racial abuse or anything like that, and then said, I'm now, like the movies, I'm now going to come, I will kill you. It was not it was not necessarily that. It was a wider cultural kind of, that whole aspect. As I said, Bruce Lee particularly. That also. And I think I'll touch on the whole holistic side of it, because as much as the football, for example, is fitness and a bit of community get together and playing as a team, which is fantastic, and I still love to today. The martial arts probably provided a wider base of stability. So whether you got the physical fitness,
you got discipline as well, didn't you?
You've got the discipline, you've got the respect for the teacher, you've got respect for each other. You help bring up students that are less able than you. So a lot of them things that really resonated with me. And
you definitely, your personalities, because I've played football with you, mate, and we've played in some interesting games.
Go on.
Where sometimes it's got a bit heated, a bit aggressive, and you've always kept your head. I don't remember many times where I played with where I could look at you and go, he's gone, he's lost his head, and you always stayed really calm, and that's something that really stuck with me actually, and I did take that. I'm not blowing it up, but I did take that a lot of me into my football as well.
No, I appreciate that. To hear that.
And I do it with my coaching as well. I do try and stay as calm as I can. He'll probably tell you that it's totally different.
Not always the case.
When he was
I do remember.
I'll never forget. We was at Nebworth. He was manager, and I was just there watching at the time. The team was losing like 3-1 or something. The third goal went in. There was 2-1, and the third goal went in. He ran over to the corner flag and booted it as hard as he could. And he said he's the calm one.
Yeah, but I think
snapped as well.
Really good kick.
It went down the car park.
But I think, to be fair, I really appreciate you saying that actually, and it's interesting. It just shows how you can have impact on people,
100%.
Positive or negative sometimes.
Pitch definitely, inspired the way I tried to act as a footballer. I always wanted to be strong and competitive. But I also wanted to never let anyone see me lose, because then they've got you.
Yeah, of course they have. Yeah. And to be fair, as much as it's lovely to hear that, there was a period, I think football's a very emotional game, isn't it? There was a period where I couldn't manage my emotions that well. And like you said, once you've gone past that line, they know you're gone, and you're gone. You just can't function in the way you can or know you can.
We see it now on a Saturday with the youngsters. Once their head's gone,
it's gone.
He has to get them off because their head's completely gone. It ain't coming back.
Yeah, you can't. It's
amazing.
Goes
into what you're now achieving. Do you know
Absolutely, And I think I've learned the hard way, and I think it's a real life experience, isn't it? To go through knowing what it's like to lose it, and then to maybe try and put things in place to do that better next time round.
Good tool.
Yeah, that's just absolutely vital to me. I have to say, it's probably, there's always that spark in there. I don't think that's ever going to go out, and I don't think you want that to go out. But equally, I think as you get older, it's probably a little easier to control it.
Yeah.
I have to say.
There does come a form, when you're a kid and your parents or elders tell you about how you need to mind yourself and how you need to act, at that time you're always whatever. But as you get older, and I've got 4 children now, I'm so mindful of the way, obviously I've come from addiction of drink and stuff like that, but coming out of that, I'm really mindful about how I set myself now and how I compose myself. And it's the same, like I say with you, I've always associated you with being, very good with your emotions, do you know what I mean? And that's something I'll always remember.
Well, that's good, because from all accounts, he could kick the crap out of someone.
Well, I know he could jump and high kick me, I know that much.
But, it's an interesting point, Shane, because with the martial arts, and this is, again, going back to that discipline, because prior to that, I was in various fisticuffs or whatever it's called, I think generally genuine reasons, but maybe sometimes, maybe not. But then when I learnt the martial arts and was actually more capable, more stronger, more fitter, I didn't have that issue. I knew how to avoid because a lot of these things you do see coming. But, sometimes you then end up, you get baited in, or you can't help it, or they take the piss at your family or your colour or whatever, and damn, and you lose it, and you're in. Do you know what I mean? And it's a mess, and it's just a waste of time, and it's in front of people, and it's a nightmare, really.
And 9 times out of 10, when you're in that situation as well, you bring other people into it. And that I felt a few times where I'd got into issues. The people sometimes that came in to either help or got caught up in it, I know my cousin at one time got caught up in one of my situations, and unfortunately lost his licence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll always feel guilty for that one because, you know, he was just coming in to protect his cousin.
Yeah.
It was probably my stupidity how it all started in the first place.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, it's so much of a thing like that where you have to watch for other people as well.
Yeah, too true.
Call it the ripple effect, don't they?
Yeah.
Psychology.
So you were quite disciplined as a youngster and in through your early teens, later teens. The martial arts obviously took control of your life a little bit, and you got better and better by all accounts. Talk to me a little bit, or talk to us a little bit about your career, if such, in the martial arts industry. How far did you get? Did you win much?
Yeah, so I think for me, martial arts, I talked about some of the key things that drew me to it, but over the years, it's that consistency, whereas so much other things I've gone up and down and stopped and started. And it's not always being the best or winning titles or trophies. Nothing wrong with that. It's pretty good as well, by the way. And I think we touched on it just before we were actually online, that there were periods of like the 90s, for example, 89 to about 93, raving. And that was probably more dominant than training. I just absolutely love the culture. It just completely took over, and that lifestyle. But even then, when I had a chance, I was still doing something.
Yeah.
So there were people that were more dedicated than me, that achieved more in fighting or trained more regular or whatever. But some of them now still aren't training for various reasons, whether they've given up or they've got injuries or whatever. But that consistency has seen me through.
And you're still training today?
Yeah, still to today. As we may touch on, I've kind of designed my own martial arts system, particularly for middle-aged men's sort of health and well-being.
Which we'll touch on.
Yeah, we'll touch on that a bit. But yeah, the thing is for me is consistency. Not always being the best, but just every day or once a week doing something, when you don't want to, when you can't be bothered, whether it's just breathing exercise.
That's the most important times, isn't it, when you can't be bothered?
It's the one.
Yeah.
And you never, ever regret it. There's maybe once or twice out of 1,000 times that maybe maybe had a slight injury or something. You might have thought, I should have done it today or whatever.
Yeah.
But 99.8% of the time, once you finish that bit of exercise or a little run or some forms or some shadow boxing or just, whatever, you always feel better for it.
Yeah.
Releases good endorphins, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. It's loads of complex chemicals going in there, from endorphins, from your mild dopamine rush, your serotonin high, all these complex chemicals interacting with the brain. That's why people go back to rave culture. That's why people do drugs or have done drugs. It's almost trying to replace that natural high. You kind of biochemical high, and it's great sometimes. But we have that almost natural high within us. And if you find things that you enjoy and love, that feeling is just quite phenomenal.
Utopia, and that's what we try and help with Rise Above as well, is help people understand that are like, well, why are you on the gear so much? Why are you on this so much? It's because they don't quite understand that person isn't just a crackhead at the start. They're searching for that
something,
that high, or for that emotion that makes them feel just so good.
You got it.
And that's where it starts.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because they have to keep searching, keep getting more, the next thing you know, it's taken and consumed their life.
You got it.
You know,
got it.
That's what we're trying to try and educate. Well, not educate, because I think that sounds sort of demeaning to people. They're not stupid, but just make them a bit more aware of how it comes about.
I think sometimes you're just sharing a message, even what you're doing now, and for some people we could all say, oh, that's quite obvious.
Yeah.
But for some people might not have seen it like that. They're in that place now and they haven't seen it like that. And it could be now the first time they heard that, thought, yeah, that's kind of got a point there. Do you know what I mean?
Especially when they're loved ones that are so close to the person, they can't actually see past the fact of, well, why can't you stop if you love me? It totally, your tunnel visioned, well, you don't love me then.
Yeah.
You don't care about us. It's not how it is.
No, far from it.
And it's trying to help people understand that just because they've found this path, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that they don't love you.
No.
It means that they don't love themselves.
Yeah.
In fairness. That's
absolutely,
where it's at. Or they don't love their life at that moment,
Exactly that.
Sorry, but...
No, not at all. You've got valid points, and obviously we're here to discuss valid points and life. I'm on the flip side of the drug taking and the alcohol taking. I've actually met people in my past that are addicted to the gym. Full on addicted to the gym. And if they can't have the gym for one day, they're like a bear with a sore head. They're like a heroin addict with no heroin.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's an illness. And they're pumped, right? And when I look at them and I'm like, God, there's more to life than the gym. But that's their escape. That's their escape from reality. They chuck their headphones on, they pump iron, and they do whatever they do. And then the matey I'm talking about sits in the hot tub afterwards and relaxes his body. That's his norm. That's his day-to-day life. That's like a heroin addict taking heroin every day, or an alcoholic taking alcohol every day. That man in question actually had a reason why he was using the gym.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it wasn't just to get fit. It wasn't just to get beefy. It was actually a trauma that he went through as a child that's lived with him for the rest of his life currently. And it's interesting to see that you've chose sport as a way of life. How old are you now?
56.
56 years old, and you're still in the gym training.
Absolutely.
As you were 25, 30 years ago.
Well, I've adapted since then. There's certain things that are similar, but there are certain things, because of some of the changes that we experience as middle-aged guys, that you probably don't need as much of as you once did. So some of the exercise and training has been adapted as I've got older, but the consistency is still there. For me, everyone's sort of different. There's different theories out there. For me, I try to do at least something, a minimum of 5 days a week. And then I have at least a day or two rest.
That's still dedication.
Yeah, you say that sort of like, but that's pure dedication.
Yeah.
and fair play to you. Do you know what I mean? Because and also, but how do you work that? You've got a partner, you've got children. How do you find that balance then of? Because for me, I've always got an excuse.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
With the football and everything else, and the podcast, and obviously with Shane.
Yeah, sure.
But how do you find that balance then?
I think for me, I'm quite structured and organised. So I'm a planning person. I like to sort of, whether it's diaries, whether it's bullet points, whether it's posters up, whether it's reminders, I'm quite organised in that sense. So for me, I incorporate it in my morning routine. So I always exercise in the morning, very, very rare in the afternoon or evening. So I would get up in the first thing in the morning, I pray, and then I would go downstairs and I would have a set exercise that cuts across about 4 different disciplines. There's usually between strength, relaxation, flexibility and mobility, and what's the final one? Cardiovascular work. So usually in one of them 4 areas.
And you do all that every morning?
No, so I would do like for about 2 or 3 days of strength work. Then I'd do a couple of days of cardiovascular work. Then I'd do a couple of days of mobility and core strength. And then a couple of days of more relaxation kind of techniques.
Is that normally at the end? Because obviously you've been through all the other exercise, so the relaxation.
Yeah, usually, yeah. That was usually part of the warm down.
I know nothing about gyms and exercise, as you can tell.
No, you're looking okay, mate. You're looking okay.
Dad bod.
Yeah.
But no, I emphasise the fact that like doing that every day for you is your routine, and that's what gets you up in the morning to face another day at work.
Very much.
To face any challenges that bring you in the day. Mine is wake up, have a fag and coffee. A little bit different to your routine. But yeah, I want to touch. You were just saying about how you like to be planning and things like that. You made sure I sent you some bullet points, as you just said.
Yes, yeah, I did,
for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to get back onto the bullet points that I wrote to your message. I think one of the bullet points, or I know one of the bullet points, was around your work life.
Yeah, sure.
So we've discussed that you're into martial arts. You like to keep fit. Blah, blah, blah. You like playing football, you support a rubbish team, but we won't talk about that. No. It's another podcast.
Shame.
I'm a West Ham fan.
I'm off age. You said you weren't going there.
I'm a West Ham fan, so I can't speak.
Yeah, right, okay. I don't mind how to be fair.
Yeah. But you obviously worked in the public sector for over 20 years, or around 20 years.
Yeah, it's pretty much 20 on the dot, yeah.
And in that time, you've worked with criminal justice system, you've been in the public sector and just worked for the people, because that's what public sector is. You're working for the public, you're working to better the environment you're living in and working in. talk to us about that role, because some of this might have been challenging. How did you face them challenges, especially with criminals? You know, they're not the easiest of people to change, if you like.
No, absolutely. So for me, I mean, I'll just jump back to the last job I had before the public service. So I used to work at Vauxhall Motors in Luton.
I remember that.
Yeah, car production. You remember
It's
them
just
days?
shut down, isn't it?
Yeah, the actual, the
Yeah.
second part of it, the IBC, where they built the vans, yeah. And that was, I think, that's after about 125 years of car production there. I think when it first started, it was about 80,000 men used to work there. And I think even when I was there, it was about 10,000 still before I left. And we're almost going back to school again now, because I got myself in loads of trouble in Vauxhall. But there was always a moral side to it. Now, sometimes I was a pain in the arse, don't get me wrong. But there was a side where I always wanted to help people who were being treated unfairly, or they weren't allowed to have breaks, or it's a ginormous corporation, and they generally treated people quite bad.
Yeah,
It wasn't a bad job; it was quite well paid.
Especially in them days
Yeah,
as well.
it was.
It wasn't like, again, how it is now with rules and regulations.
I mean, health and safety, for example. They
Was
used
it
to
health and
take.
safety?
Yeah, they took the lids off the toilets because people go to the toilet too long, having breaks for too long. So they took the lids off the toilets.
People struggle to understand that. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So I got a bee on my bonnet and I said, I ain't having that. So I can't remember how I even started it. I think I got actually a bit of trouble because it was something separate, and then when they tried to do me, they brought up this toilet seat thing, and I had done a bit of research. Again, this is my more analytical brain, so I looked into it, and it wasn't actually a British law, but it was a European workers' rights where the toilets had to have lids on them.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Shocker, innit? For health and safety.
Not like sperm with scrubs.
Yeah, you know. So they were trying to get me done for this thing, and I then ended up saying, well, I know you're breaking the European sort of rights, this particular workers' rights. And I was fucking hell. Totally got them.
Yeah.
It completely threw them. And it became quite a big thing, and I ended up getting in contact with the unions in Liverpool, was another factory, and eventually we got them to change.
Yeah.
It took years, it took at least many, many months, and we got them to change, and I was like, it was a big thing and everything. And it's a bit of a long-winded question, but there is a point behind there. And when I'm going back to school as well, I've recently met a few people from school, and they told me similar stories, as much as the Joker thing that we spoke about, particularly as I got a bit older. I had a bit of a social cause thing, and I didn't like people being bullied, and I didn't know how the teachers treated certain people and stuff. And many of my old school friends who I'd met were saying, that's what you were like at school. You used to really give it to us. You always used to stand up for us. I couldn't even remember half of this.
Yeah, because it came natural. It weren't even a thought for you in that process.
Bizarre, but particularly at that age, I thought, messing around, football, girls, whatever. I didn't, politics or people's rights, really. But there was probably something there already. So after I left Vauxhall, because it shut down the car production site, I knew I had to do something different. And I've done that a couple of times now. I had to do something radically different. I wanted to make some sort of change. I didn't want to just fit bits on a car and stand there for the whole day, I wanted to help people or, people less well off or whatever, something along them lines. So I'd already started a open university course, around I think sociology or something like that. Well, it was sociology. And I sort of passed that. So then I really enjoyed that. That did sort of hit the spot. Again, I really sort of learned something, a bit of history and power and politics and these sort of things. And I really sort of got something out of that, enjoyed that. Yeah. And so I went to university, got a degree in social science and psychology. So that gave me the opportunity to join the public service. So I started off in education. I was a learning support assistant. That was what I just finished off my degree, actually.
So just quickly, so how was that? So obviously you had a young family probably at the time. How did you find that?
Challenging.
From a financial point of view?
Yeah.
Because obviously when you start going back to school effectively, it's not the greatest pay at the start.
No, but what helped a little bit, because I got a payout from Vauxhall, and that helped a bit.
Is that because of the toilet seat thing?
yeah, got a bit extra for that as well. Yeah, get the hell out of here. And,
Get out.
Yeah, so that helped a bit. And then I eventually got some sort of government support, although they completely treated like trash at first when you went to the Social Security office. That's another story. I won't even necessarily go into that. So I got a little bit of government support and had a little bit of finance as well. But it was tough anyway, just to answer that question. Because before that, Vauxhall was quite a solid regular wage.
And it was probably quite a good wage.
Yeah, for them days, pretty flipping good, to be honest. But it's almost similar things come round full circle, which I'll get to, where by the end of it, I'd completely lost the plot, really. You know, I'd lost focus. I hated it. You're getting in trouble all the time. You're not sleeping well. By the end, it's an absolute nightmare. So you have to do something different. You had to make some sort of change. And as tough as it was, that's what I decided to do. So once I got that qualification, started doing a part-time job in a school. Then I got my first full-time job in an immigration service, a removal centre. That was a tough place to get.
You know, again, you just speak it up as a part-time school and then immigration, and it's like, whoa. And so how have you gone from, you know, a school assistant, effectively, or a teaching assistant, to then into immigration? I mean, how does that come about?
Yeah, so I suppose if you look at the qualifications in social science and psychology, so there's a bit of public service kind of modules and stuff in that. So they're both public services, even though they're doing different things. So one, you're supporting children who've got sort of physical and neurological disabilities, and the other is people sort of coming from war-torn countries or just basically shouldn't be here for other various reasons. So even though they might seem completely different, and I'm going to probation in a minute again, but there is a public service aspect to it. Yeah. So there are some sort of theoretical underpinnings where you do need the same similar skills anyway.
I can imagine that was a really tough job in immigration.
Yeah, I think, was it the toughest? Maybe.
Again, that's...
It was up there. It was tough.
How did you... You know, because some people, like myself, I'd probably find that really, really tough to deal with. Would you say that any part of your martial arts or your temperament helped you? Because you see some not nice things, or have to deal with some not nice cases. How do you deal with that as a...
Do you take it home? Did you take it home with you, or did you leave it at the front door?
I think you're absolutely right. You should try and leave it at the door. I think where the immigration was the biggest challenge, it was the hours, because you're in an institution similar to a prison. They've got keys for their own rooms and stuff, but lots of similarities to a prison. And you are there for like 12-hour shifts, and it were rolling shifts. So you could start like, I don't know, a Friday night could be your first shift, and you'll work all the way through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you finish on Tuesday morning, something like that. So your body clock and your circadian rhythm, which I'm much more into now,
it's not natural.
It's completely it's completely unnatural. And being in that building, nights as well, being in that building, stuck in there, they call it institutional sort of addiction. And yeah, definitely, I only did a year. That was enough. I learned a huge amount from there. Yes, there were some tragic things, but there was cases where I learned and helped people as well.
I was going to say, obviously I worked in the charity sector. I got a lot from my job, and I took a lot of reward from it, like mentally. You must, when you worked on a difficult case in immigration and you've made sure that person's been treated with rights and treated well, and they've got a success move or whatever, and you was part of that, did that make you release good endorphins inside?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, because I think, there's that sort of wider responsibility that I think I've always had, like I've said, without realising. And you just want to do the right thing for people. If they've done the wrong thing and they need to be returned or whatever, then that's absolutely fine. But for those, there was families there that lived in the UK for 20, 30 years, and they've been brought there just like straight off of school, outside the front of the school type thing.
In front of all their friends and
family. And you don't need to do that.
No.
And you do find in them spaces, immigration and probably probation service to some extent, you do get people who maybe are there for to help people, and others are there to not. And that's just the way it is.
They're just wearing a cross.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, they're just there, and some take it a bit further. They because there's a security element to them, and some enjoy that side of it. Maybe a little too much. When they're going in wheeling the violence. But then so I did that year. really good, really great experience, but very tough. Don't think I could have handled much more. And then I went.
Was that emotionally as well as, you know, just the whole side?
Yeah, the whole.
Not physically, just emotionally.
Yeah, the physically was okay, but as I said, I think particularly the hours, the times and the hours, and you're just completely out of line with the rest of your family. So whether it's your children going to school Monday to Friday, or your wife working, or your mates going out the weekend, whatever, you're just completely out of line, and that's probably the toughest bit, I think. Maybe if it was a 9 to 5. I think I did do it 8 to 4 for a period in health and fitness, ironically, and that was a little better. But then maybe by the end it was too much anyway. But the hours were, I think, the killer in hindsight. So I eventually moved to the probation service. Really good training. It was a 2-year training. So I got my second degree then. That was in crime and community justice.
You got 2 degrees?
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah. So that was the second one, and that was
from someone that didn't really fancy school and didn't really pay attention as such. That's some achievement.
Yes.
You know,
That's nuts. Well done.
What's that? Kudos to you.
Kudos to you.
Kudos.
We drop that in every podcast.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be part of the kudos club. Yeah, so that was another incredibly interesting career. Learned a lot again. Learned a lot that I didn't know.
Did you make a difference, Dave?
Did I?
In the probation?
I think I did, but I'm going to come to this near the end of this piece about what that was almost one of the problems, really, because similar to the immigration service, I went there. I thought I'd mainly just be working with younger men, really, you know, and maybe try and help them not follow the same footsteps I had, type thing, or I could recognise some of the behaviours and some of the challenges they got.
We've all got friends that are
that's right.
You all know.
So I thought I could help in that space. But it was a bit more complex than that, really. I think, remember the first time I had to deal with like sex offenders, I had to case manage sex offenders, and I wasn't ready for that.
No,
I was not ready for that, I'll be honest with you. You know, I could handle maybe a young kid who's, you know, smoking a bit, gets himself in a spot of bother, and, you know, that type of thing. But then all of a sudden you're dealing with these sort of cases, and I wasn't really ready for that. We talk about emotion again. You know, some of the crimes that these individuals committed. Were very hard to take the emotion
and you
out of it.
have to be unbiased.
Yeah,
unbiased.
Unbiased. You've got to need to be, absolutely, and treat them, you know, in the right way. In a professional manner, and that was tough. Certainly, but again, I learned a lot.
I bet you learned a lot about yourself.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, very, very much. And then you even learn some of the things that you probably were a bit of a arsehole yourself as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's good, you know. I probably wouldn't have took that message on when I was younger. But I think as you get older, you may be ready to take some of the messages on board and learn from it. And really touching on what you were saying, Shane, one of the reasons why I probably struggled a little bit and ended up leaving the probation, because there was so much difference I knew I could make, but whether it was a lack of sort of funds or you just got too much people on your caseload, so you can't manage people properly, you're sort of just ticking by sort of thing, you know, and these individuals need that support.
100% I get that,
you know,
in, out, all day long.
That was not what you come in for. You really want to make a change, and then all of a sudden, several years later, you find you're almost in that tick box thing. That's no good to anyone as much as yourself as those you're hopefully trying to help. So while a few odd people who was on probation I see them different times, I said, thanks so much, you were really helpful, you treated me like a person and stuff. Again, really, really helpful. Being an analytical guy, I didn't know, or certainly didn't believe I was helping that much people at the time. So I thought this is becoming a bit of a waste.
You didn't have enough from it, did you?
Just
in that respect, you were like, I want more from life than this.
Yes. Because I thought I could make such a change, really, and it didn't really happen. So I had the opportunity to move into a central role, so I was working in Hertfordshire, but I had the opportunity to work in a national role in the civil service. And that I thought, I can now make a difference at a national level, so let's go for that. So I was successful in that, so I started to work in the national team. And I was working in this, so I wasn't having as much face-to-face, one-to-one work, but I was working on things like policy.
Still in the sort of probation?
Still in probation, prison, and youth justice. Okay. So it's the 3 bodies now under the one sort of overall organisation, overseen by the Ministry of Justice. So that was really exciting, you know, to start knowing I could have this
On a
influence.
national level.
Yeah, so I was writing policies that could influence like 300,000 people, you know, so that was like, yes, now I can make that big change, you know. So the first few years of that was very exciting. I remember doing like my first diversity inclusion form that people would have to complete when they first go on probation, and then it would influence the services and support they would get, as well as some of the risk stuff that they would need to address as well. But it would influence the service and support that them individuals get throughout their order. So that was like just a massive
you put
thing.
that in place?
Yeah, that was what, you know, obviously it's a big team that does it, but I was the lead. You know, the guy. It should be still a policy in the thing. That's a public policy, staff policy. You can't see it online. But if it's offender facing, you'll see it online. You'll see my name on there as the lead policy.
That must make you proud, man.
Yeah, massive.
Like, I'm proud of you.
They are the moments.
It's not me that done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they are
make
the
sense?
moments where you do actually. Because I can beat myself up quite a bit sometimes. I always try to push, but they are the moments when you think that's quite a big thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, you know, especially where you come from as well, like you said, you know, and the same teachers or whatever, they would probably think there's no way this guy, this flipping idiot, could ever do anything like that.
Some of them teachers are probably having to sign your form.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quite
some
possibly.
of them on probation.
Yeah, there you go. No, I'm feeling you on that, Adrian.
Hello?
I must admit.
If any of his teachers are watching, good luck.
So that was, I really enjoyed that and made a lot of progression. But then as I sort of moved up, I kind of had, you know, when you end up meeting a manager you just don't get on with, you're just not feeling them. And that was almost like a bit of a snowball from there. Things just started to go wrong. People, like one of the managers, like, sort of assistant director, that kind of teeth work from you that you had completed. They sort of start to badmouth you a bit. You start to not enjoy your job. You're all of a sudden, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the same people that then say, oh, he's a so-and-so and he's a this and he's a that. You know you're not. You try, you work hard, you do whatever you do. But as time goes on, you start to lose a bit of confidence. People start to believe what others say. You don't get the same opportunities. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you do start to become crap. And you do have time off because you don't want to go to work anymore. And you get more colds because you're not as healthy as you once were, you know? And it started to...
stuck in a rut.
Yeah, and it just started to, you know, get into a bit of a rut. So I ticked along for a few more years. I was just sort of, again, kind of struggling a bit, really. Wasn't really enjoying it anymore. People could notice that you just weren't quite yourself. And...
Just quickly, so all of these situations where it weren't quite, and then you started feeling... You know, a lot of people would obviously, in different circumstances, maybe start having a drink or, you know, different aspects. What was your release? What got you through that, you know, at them times? Because that's, you know, there's a lot of situations. You carried on for a couple of years. That's tough, you know, especially in that industry where it is tough industry. You know, what got you through that? Was it the fitness? Was it the family? Do you know what I mean?
So the fitness always had the consistency. So there's always some fitness there, and it always helps to some extent. I think the family, they probably knew that you're struggling a bit, but I suppose this is a bit of a classic bloke thing, isn't it? Yeah. You kind of don't really give away too much.
Yeah.
You know, I might let the wife know so-and-so's a bit of a so-and-so today, or whatever, but I'm not going to give her the full, I'm really struggling here, I don't want to do this anymore sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So... I think as far as the more negative side of managing it, you're probably drinking a bit more. I wasn't a heavy drinker, but you would start to drink that bit more consistently. So instead of maybe just a shot a night, you're having 2 or 3 shots a little bit later. You feel a little bit more like shit in the morning. And it's a bit of that, you're getting that cycle a little bit, don't you?
So you manage that situation effectively.
I would say not too bad.
So what would be your inspiration of getting through that as such? What would be your mindset then? Do you know what I mean?
So for me, I look at mental health or well-being as a continuum. And it doesn't matter who you are, how happy you are or how low mood you may be. And there may be various issues why that might be the case. But I look at it as a continuum. So even if you are going through poor periods, which we all do and will go through again at some point, it's just about counterbalancing it with at least something that is more positive. And it could be the smallest thing ever. It could be just giving your daughter a kiss before you fuck off to that same job.
Dave, do you know what just sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all.
You've just hit the nail right on the head for me, because personally, before I launched Feed Up Warm Up, I was a chef. I was a self-employed chef, losing money. And it was getting me right down in the dumps. And I already have depression and anxiety anyway. So add in that stress and that pressure, it just like a fizzy Coke bottle struck and then lid open. That was how I was. So on the back of a napkin one day when I was about to lose about £3,000 worth of stock, so not a good day for me. But on the back of that napkin I wrote Feed Up, Warm Up, Homeless Food, Trailer, Church Car Park, or whatever I wrote on there. And then on the bottom of that napkin was my losses for the day. So there was a negative on the bottom and there was a positive on the top. That was in October 2018. I launched Feed Up Warm Up in 2018 December. So 3 months later. In October that year, I threw all my antidepressants and my anti-anxiety tablets in the bin. And I haven't taken them since. So what you just said about finding that something positive, it works. Because I'm living proof of that.
And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I tell a lot of my guys that as well, And I think when you are bombarded with so much negativity, it's not easy, but it's just that little chink of light, because sometimes you're going to feel like crap, but it's that chink of light is the one, and then you can rebuild and build up again.
It's having that tools and that focus to forget all the haze around you and focus on that little light there, because that's where you're gonna find your true happiness effectively. Although we might be unhappy on the way and there'll be little bumps, but you will find what your calling is when you get to the end of that path.
Sorry to cut you off anyway.
No, not at all. I mean, I'd pretty much finished actually. So we'd got to this period at the back end of the civil service where I was really struggling, not enjoying it that much. But then I know we might even touch on the COVID context, so I might even finish that off. So let's stay there, and then if we do touch back on the COVID, I'll come back to that. So just remember, I'm just nearly the end of the civil service and struggling a bit, last year or two.
COVID is the next topic.
There you go. Smooth.
So
seamlessly.
You remembered your bullet
don't
points.
forget that.
His bullet points, I'm telling you.
Exactly that. But it's tough to bring this up because I know some of the things that happened to you during that period of everybody's mad world. We all lived through COVID. Everybody remembers COVID. I worked all the way through it. I was classed as a frontline worker, so I was working with people that had been kicked out of the hotels that they were put in by the government. That system did not work, by the way.
No.
But that's another podcast.
Yeah, right, okay, I'll be interested to hear more, but
It's another podcast, that is. But opening a whole can of worms there. But what I'm trying to say is that I think everybody has stuff that's happened during COVID that they will always remember, and you've given me some of yours, and now's your opportunity to air it.
Okay.
Some of it's tough, and I appreciate you being as honest and open as you can.
No, absolutely. No, I appreciate the opportunity as well. For COVID with me, I think there's a couple of sides to it really. So going back to where I was at the civil service, so by the time I'm near the end of the civil service, I left last year. So you're talking about 2 or 3 years still to go when the sort of COVID first lockdowns and stuff started. And for me, I also worked all the way through it, obviously working for the prison and probation service. So we were under quite a bit of pressure, but I enjoyed that in the sense of that purpose again. This was
Did that
really.
Give you a little bit of a.
It did.
A kick up.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because again, I kind of maybe less focus on some of the personal issues and that bigger need. This is an absolute emergency, and we need to sort of keep the system going, as it were. We've got to keep going here. So it did give a bit of purpose, I have to say. So almost a bit of love there again, really. But there was also challenges. Actually, my friend, he's a good work friend. He was the first probation officer actually to die of COVID around 2022. And that was really tough, because it does bring it home.
Yeah.
You know, you got everyone saying it's this and that's a conspiracy, or it's this, or all these sort of crazy things. But then when you feel that reality, someone you know passing, you know, it's really
So
tough.
That's such a tough moment, because again, you know, as more and more comes to light and more we understand it, at that time there was panic and we didn't quite understand what was going on. And yes, we are learning more about it now, that maybe we could have dealt with it a bit better.
Maybe.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you believe you should have been jabbed, whether you shouldn't have, whether you should have been locked down. We still lost people. You still
Lots
lost
of people.
people
Lots
within
of
that
people.
environment.
Serious,
You know,
yeah.
so that's what I think sometimes we forget is, yes, COVID can have been dealt with better. We could have probably learned a lot of things. I'm sure there's loads of things people have got opinions on. But if you really strip it back, we still lost thousands of people because of the illness. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it is tough.
Yeah.
You know.
And that really did bring it home, you know. To be fair, from a more positive perspective, it probably was the first start of my method, really, because you couldn't, obviously, there was restrictions on going to the gym or whatever, or we would call it a dojo, place of learning. Martial arts, we call it, it's a place of learning. So you do training and stuff, but there's lots of other things you learn.
I know what a
at the same
dojo is
time.
because I watch Karate Kid.
Yes, did you see the new one?
Yes, I have.
Yes, yeah, brilliant, yeah. Jackie Chan's my man, you know. Yeah, love it, yeah. You know, when he first come out with Drunken Master and stuff in the late 70s.
See, I grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up. Excuse me. My nan used to absolutely, and we're talking old Chinese,
Yeah.
you know, films, and they were proper.
Yeah,
they
they're
were
real
talking
too.
and
everything.
the mouth was moving. My nan, them and
And that sort of makes it, doesn't it? That's the thing.
And like you say, the Drunken Master and all of them. But yeah, wow, that brings back some memories. That does.
So you couldn't go to the dojo as often as you wanted
No,
to?
you couldn't. I mean, obviously, during the lockdowns, they were completely stopped. Thank God, Boris, it wasn't much I necessarily agreed with him from a political perspective, but he still allowed us to go to the parks and stuff. So, for me, again, from a sport health point of view, that was one thing I would love to think everyone learned from COVID, that if you're reasonably healthy with a reasonable nutrition, a reasonable weight, you could handle that virus way better than others who didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think that was, to me, was just such a message. And I remember during COVID, because I couldn't go to the gym, I would do some old martial arts and things like that. But I wasn't kind of getting the same excitement out of it. It's not quite the same. You're not with the lads and things like that. You're not sparring and things like that. So I wasn't kind of getting the excitement, but I was still doing something. It's better than nothing. Still getting out there.
Some exercise
But it's a bit of fresh air, you know, still moving the body and whatever, and just getting out, really, instead of getting stuck in the home. And so it was okay. And then I started to rehash some of my old kung fu styles and things like that, going back to obviously saying kung fu. That's why I did kung fu at that particular time in my life, around the middle or early 80s. And started to incorporate some of them traditional exercises, and then I started to incorporate them with some newer sort of Muay Thai and more MMA type exercises, and I was kind of just making up at the beginning. And
fitness milkshake.
yeah, kind of. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was just trying stuff.
Yeah.
And I was kind of starting to enjoy it. So I thought that's going to be at least step one. I was enjoying it, I'm getting something from it. And started to get some sort of physical changes as well, feel a bit stronger, a bit tighter in certain areas and stuff. And this is looking good. And a colleague at work kind of noticed, because bear in mind, them days we were proper under pressure. You're getting the vaccine within the prison establishment, you had people dying.
Did you have people dying in prison with COVID?
Not that much. I mean, I can't remember exact figures, but again, I think when you talk about that purpose, not just me, but many other people did a lot more than I did, but they did a pretty good job. You know, government, civil service, you know, they're all there to be cussed by everyone who thinks they could do better, and a lot of times they can't. It was a really good effort. It was probably the state better. Yeah, but then maybe sometimes it can be. So a few friends of mine, well, one in particular, he kept on noticing that I was quite a buzzing in meetings and stuff, and I was really on my toes and stuff. And he was like, "Flipping heck, Dave, you're on it at the moment." He goes, "We're all flipping under pressure at the moment, and you're flipping having the time of your life, sort of thing, you know." And I didn't take much notice of it, to be honest. And he said something similar about a week later. Then someone else said something similar. And I think it was about the fifth person, I'd say after about 2 months. And I thought, I wonder if what I'm doing there is kind of part of it. I always know the benefits martial arts had, but what I was doing now, this new thing, is
the stuff that you made up.
Yeah, is that what they're talking about? Yeah. So the same guy, Rob, his name is, he said to me, what you're doing and stuff. So I was the first person I ever told, really. I said, I do this in the morning. I get up and I have a cold shower, and then I go for a walk, and then I do this, and I do a bit of stretching and that sort of thing. And he said, yeah, that sounds good. I'll have some of that. He goes, I'll be looking to get in a bit of exercise. So I said, yeah, so this is what I do. So he came back a couple of days later and showed me what he was doing. It was completely wrong. Do you know what I mean? I said, I didn't say that. Yeah. It's completely wrong. He looked absolutely terrible. So then I thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll put it on a video, I'll record what I do in the morning, and I'll just share it with you that way. So then he watched the video and then showed me what he was doing, which was a bit more like it. So that was pretty much that. And then I did something similar again for another guy who he told. And I suppose unofficially that was the birth of my martial arts method, really. I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
That was like 3.5 years ago now, possibly 4 years. So I didn't know at the time, but that was probably the first time that I'd started to share that message and get people to do something similar and get the benefits.
So who was the first guy, Rob?
Yeah.
So big shout out to Rob.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know what I'd done without you. And I'm still in contact with him. We still do work together and stuff. It's almost like we do some one-to-one stuff as well, and we do some joint work.
Do you charge him now?
No, not at all, no. Because he's done so much advertising for me, I couldn't. So his sort of glory story is, and he won't mind me sharing this, is when he first started, he was a bit overweight, he was stacking on sweets and everything, all sorts, put a bit of the old dad bod, like I said. He had done a bit of karate before, but hadn't done it for a long time. And cut a long story short, from the first time he started with me, within 15 weeks, I think, I can't remember if it's 14 or 16, he had run his first half marathon.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, fair play.
Never done one before. Run his first marathon in his favourite charity. It's actually a homeless charity. I can't remember the name of the charity. Not Shelter, not Mungo's. Crisis. Yeah, he done his first marathon on behalf of that charity because he's worked in that space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, without knowing, that was the kind of birth of it, really. So sport-wise, I kind of turned that into a positive, I have to say, which was quite good. Things then went down the hill a little bit after that. To be honest, but again, we may touch on that when I talk about some of the kind of how I got into the actual martial arts and actually really designed it more officially. I'll sort of come to that in a bit if that's okay.
Which is when you left employment completely and then set up your company that you're working with now.
Yeah, and what led to it? Yeah, absolutely. So after 20 years, I had started to do it a bit more voluntarily. But nothing official. The company wasn't sort of registered or anything like that. I was just sending guys some videos, really. Yeah.
Quite surprised you didn't jump on Zoom like everybody else did during COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me that obviously makes incredible sense now.
Yeah.
But because you don't, I think for me you kind of think maybe there's a lack of confidence there. You think,
don't believe in yourself.
Yeah, everyone else is more professional and they know what they're doing, and I'm just doing stuff and just giving it to someone to just try.
Yeah, but you've just
I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah, but you've just helped enable somebody to run a half marathon that wouldn't have.
In hindsight, it sounds kind of obvious.
So in theory, you should have thought then, hang on a minute, I'm onto something here.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because of the mood and the environment you were in at that time that you felt not confident enough to go for that? Do you know what I mean?
Because there was some. Yeah, I don't know.
Work life. Do you know what I mean? And
I think I just didn't put two and two together. I just saw my expertise in what I was doing, and certainly keeping me busy. And even though I've done martial arts, and I've never really taught martial arts, and historically I never quite knew why, because a lot of people that I'd trained with, they had their own classes and they trained fighters, and I'd never done it. And I never quite knew why, to be honest. So I never quite thought it was quite right for me. I think it was only once I really maybe had fully got more into my method and what it was. Again, being that organised person, I had to have this method and I had to know what each module was, and that's how I kind of work. I just wouldn't... how I was kind of just sharing it randomly, I just didn't think there was a professional aspect to that.
Not like me setting up a charity writing on the back of a napkin and...
Yeah, but sometimes you need that. Sometimes I can be a bit of a procrastinator, and sometimes it's good to think and take your time, but sometimes you've got to go for it.
So all of this time, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Every time you've been speaking, and everything you've kept going on about how you're really analytical. You really have to write things down. You really have to put. Do you know that's so many traits of autism, effectively, because people look at autism and straight away be like, oh my God, no. But actually,
could be high
some of the
function,
traits are so good.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It's made you so clever with your points and how you get things and how you do things in your mind and how clear you are, and that has helped you get through all of these moments in your life.
Yeah, definitely.
Because obviously everyone has got autistic traits, and it's just how much you've got.
Yeah, that's right.
And obviously, sometimes the good parts can outweigh the bad parts,
By all accounts,
really drives you on.
By all accounts, if you can call it autistic traits, yours are strengths.
Yeah.
They're not weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're strengths. And I've met autistic people
Yeah,
that are their brains, their memory.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I've met one that was an artist. Like the art was like.
Yeah.
So not all. When people say autism, everyone goes, "Oh no." Like, I'm not autistic.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a strength. It's not weakness.
Definitely, yeah. And I think from
100%.
a mental health or from a psychological point of view, now I work a lot in neurology as well. It's kind of a core part of the program. And I think the term neurodiverse now is more of a common term. And that also, if you look at that, everyone has quite a unique way of understanding, analysing, seeing the world. And if you could see what you're positive at and enjoy that and learn from it, you're in business.
I tell you what, you've got, because this is something that really gets me, is I believe that all starts from school. Because for what I found and what I found with my children is, whenever you go to any kind of school meeting, any report, they always talk about, they're struggling in this area, they're struggling in, well, hold on a minute, what are they doing well?
Yeah.
What are they doing well?
And what can we build on from that? Yeah.
All right, so she's not great at maths. Right, so why are we going to waste all that time trying to teach her? Because really, if you're not got it at 12, you ain't going to get it at 19. So, but what is she good at? Let's focus on that, and let's push that and get her really good at that. And then build her up that way and look at the confidence. Instead of keep telling her, you're not great at maths, you're not great at maths. So when she goes to her exam, what's she going to do?
Yeah, I'm just not, I can't do this,
fail,
it's too much.
But if we
I'm
keep
stupid,
saying to
there's
her,
something wrong with
don't
me.
worry about that.
Yeah.
Let's worry about what you're really good at, what you really... And as a society and as an educational band or whatever, I don't think we do enough.
No, far from it.
We're too worried about what we can't
What you can't do, yeah.
Well, what can you do?
Yeah.
What are
No,
you
you're
good at?
right, and that's known in positive psychology as strength-based theory, and it's quite new now. It's about 20, 30 years old, but it's new in psychology.
Strength-based approach.
Yeah, exactly, and it's much more focused about what you were good at. You know, you can get slightly better at some things you're not very good
course.
at, but you'll never be brilliant. But there are things that you absolutely are brilliant at.
Do you
And it's
know?
identifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, just quickly, because we have got to move on. But
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Just quickly, I did some strength-based work at my day job with a charity, and there was one on the examiner, not the examiner, the person that was educating us. Assessor was at the front, and he said, a drug dealer has come into your drop-in. He needs you to help him with a CV. So I was like, everyone was in the room like, he's a drug dealer. And then the assessor was like, well, if he's a drug dealer, he's great with money. He's got good business sense. He can keep good records because he's got a debt list, a tick list. So
Probably manage people.
manage people. So he's got these strengths that everyone's going, oh, he's a flipping drug dealer.
Yeah.
But he's actually carrying these 4 or 5 core strengths that you could walk into any job role with them strengths.
Yeah, absolutely.
People person, blah, blah, blah. He's got... So we were all very quick, even myself was very quick to go, he's a bloody drug dealer.
Yeah.
But then now I'm like, oh no, because he's got loads of different strengths.
Yeah.
And also, a guy that I've been working with for over 6 years, or 5 years at the time, I never really got to know. Everybody knew that he's the guy who lets everybody in to smoke crack.
Oh gosh.
Right? So everybody just like wrote him off. An Italian guy from the church, the Catholic church where I worked out of, has walked outside the church, and this man in question stood there. All of a sudden, he realised he was Italian. All of a sudden, started speaking in Italian to that man.
Right.
Then I got to know that man in question. He's a classical pianist.
Oh, stop.
He's come from a very well-to-do family, and he speaks 7 languages.
Never.
So
I'm always jealous of people like that.
But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody wrote him off.
Yeah, sure.
And still to this day do.
Yeah.
Even though we know all this about him now. But he himself has got strengths.
100%. Certainly sounds like it. Absolutely.
It's mad,
I
isn't
just
it?
think
Yeah,
we do that
I'm saying,
sometimes.
yeah, definitely.
We get too wound up on what people can't do, and
we
everyone's
focus on
bad
it.
points. And, come on, let's build ourselves up. Do you know what I mean?
So talking of building yourselves up,
Yeah, go
that's
for it.
perfect terminology for our next segment.
Over to you.
Moving
Go,
on. I want to talk about your business now. We've talked about your childhood. We've talked about your 20 years in the civil industry. Now I want to know what you do now. I know snippets, but men's holistical health can mean many things. Tell me what it means to you and your business.
Yeah, so for me, as I said, I've always been to that sort of health and fitness, but I knew, particularly working with the clients and particularly some of the experience that I faced, which I'll sort of come into, I knew I needed a wide, complex, integrated approach. So yes, physical health, of course, is really important. But I mean, let's look at stress, for example. Stress is usually seen as a mental health type thing, you know, so there's pressure on your head, your brain, it might come out in headaches or whatever.
Because that is a physical thing as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, you've
realise
just caught me there, because you've got that, let's say that centre is a neurological issue, or at least in the mind, but stress lives all over the body. You know, whether it's the stress hormone, cortisol, that kind of tenses your neck and strings all your neck up, that actually ends up pushing your head down, and you're actually looking at the floor all of a sudden within months. Whether it's stress that impacts your gut health, not being able to digest properly, not having that appetite. Whether it's the stress that impacts your breathing, it's a tiny bit, but you shallow breathe. You're not breathing like you should. You're not getting that clean oxygen into your blood supply, into your heart, into your lungs. All these things are impacted by stress. So I'm not sort of having necessarily go to the medicine industry or anything like that, but a doctor, for example, would look at prescribing something for that particular area of the brain or your particular mind. For me, you would have to be attacking all them areas I mentioned. And that's like an example of stress being tackled from a holistic perspective. And for me, going back to my own experiences, so we're near the end, if you remember the chronology, we're near the end now of the civil service, probably about 2 years to go. And I had like a period of really traumatic incidences over around 2.5 years. And isn't it just the case that, you know, thank God you have, when good things happen to you, they can happen in 2s and 3s and stuff like that, thank God for that. But the bad news is sometimes bad things can also happen in 2s and 3s and 4s in this case, or whatever it was. So around 2 years before I left the service, I had a very good friend of mine, well, very good friend, but a very good friend's brother, was harmed really badly, attacked with a bunch of young guys in the South Coast. I don't want to give away too much details. In the South Coast, but it's a big case. It was in all the national papers and everything. And he suffered significant brain damage.
Yeah, I think
I think you probably do know what I'm talking about. And he can't talk or anything, can't verbalise anymore. You know, he's reasonably healthy. He's recovered and he can sort of, a bit of mobility issues. He seems quite happy, thank God.
Yeah.
But it was a very traumatic experience.
Especially for his family as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially. I mean, I think of how it affected me. But again, I was a more rational, supporting guy. I knew about the criminal justice system. I helped them sort of get through it. And that was tragic. That was also tragic. Having to go through all that with the family and seeing the impact it had on them was a tough experience. And then several months after that, my auntie passed. She had quite a severe form of dementia. And that was really,
That's
that
tough
was
as well.
really, dementia.
My partner, Marianne, she works within that industry.
Is it?
Yes, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It really is. It's a cruel one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know you get various forms of it, but hers was quite
aggressive.
Yeah, quite aggressive. Yeah, it was. and watching her, you know, and again with my cousins, seeing the impact it had on them, that was tough. Although I do think we're probably even a bit closer than we were even before. So again, you try and see the positive where you can. So that was kind of 2 incidents in, and I think I was probably starting to wobble a bit, probably by the second.
When you say wobble, in what?
Mentally.
Yeah, mentally, yeah. But didn't realise at the time, I couldn't see it at the time, of course. It's easy saying it now in hindsight. But yeah, mentally, I think I was starting to struggle a bit. And bear in mind, work's now getting worse, you know, the relationship's worse, the management, it's worse, you're not enjoying your job anymore, you're struggling to sleep. So it started to really steamroll a bit now. And then the last 2 incidences, about 4 months later, I got involved with the police with an incident where, this is probably quite tough actually, where my children were involved, basically, in wonderful Stevenage. And some gobby guy sort of hit one of my daughters, hit my son actually first, and then one of my daughters, yeah. And I went to try and sort that out, if you like. And typical police doing their great job, basically, 4 or 5 of them set on me and give me a bit of a turning over.
The police did?
Yeah. Sprayed with CS gas and all sorts.
When you're trying to protect your children.
They actually escorted the guy and his wife out who actually harmed my children.
What, he didn't get arrested?
Nah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Not even arrested. Because even if they arrested me...
So what did you do? Give him 1-2 licks?
No, I couldn't get in. I tried to, you know, and
we laugh.
I know. Well,
you know, but at the time it was very traumatic.
It was horrific, you know, and I think the key is for me, and I'll come to the last incident in a minute, but the key is to me, I think individually, each one of them I probably could have handled.
Yeah.
And got through somehow, and you know, whatever, whether it's through, you know, your relaxation or your training or you're looking at the bigger picture or praying, you know, whatever it is, I believe I could have got through it. But I think when they start to pile on top of each other, each one you're not fully solved. So that's a bit open. Then you get the brand new one. The second one's a bit open, the wounds, the bereavement was right, but then you get another one, and you're struggling a bit really. And then
the last one really is tough as well, because it's
very much
as a father. Yeah. Is that protection? Is, you know, looking at your children?
All that.
And then when you're trying to do that, you're then seen as the aggressor. Yeah. You're the one your children having to watch being treated like that. It's horrific.
It was tough.
What come of that, Dave? Did you get arrested or?
Yeah, so I got arrested.
Charged?
Yeah, I was charged a relatively minor offence, public order offence, but still charged. And I think the reasons, looking at the legal point of view, because I know a couple of solicitors from my time in a civil service, is because they knew the CS spray, they had to charge me.
Yeah. Because if they didn't, you could have took them to the cleaners.
Yeah, I could have took them to the cleaners, yeah. So they kind of, you know, I think normally they might have let me off. I think particularly when they check the records and stuff. I know they shouldn't, but they might have. But yeah, that was the key once they used that.
Dave, forgive me for the I don't know what the word is, but forgive me for this. But do you think they PNC'd your name, Dave Ferguson? Seeing that you're a martial arts you're in that industry, and you've got a bit of a name. They've probably gone mob-handed on you because they know that you're handy?
I don't know, because they probably wouldn't have known my name
right?
then.
I don't know.
Yeah, but I tell you where I think you are right, is the subsequent case summary reports, well, by then they would have definitely checked who I was. They kept on saying we had to restrain him because he was so strong, because he was so resistant. We couldn't get him down on our own, so we had to use the same spray. So I think by then they would have known that I was a martial artist, and they would have almost over-egged it to say, wow, we had to get, you know, or this guy would have destroyed us. We had to do this level of restraint. So there's a lot of politics going on there, and I think...
How were your kids when all that was going down?
Oh, it's quite traumatic for them. I think my son felt quite guilty. I think one of my daughters, she was quite cool actually.
You know, again, the guilt's on there. How is it there? You know, again, without going into it fully, you know, they're still children. Do you know what I mean? And they shouldn't feel any kind of guilt in that. Do you know what I mean? Especially, like you say, seeing you in that kind of predicament.
Yeah.
You know, I know that firsthand because obviously, you know, my children have seen me in some kind of state.
Yeah.
And I still carry that guilt.
Yeah.
You know, to this day.
Yeah. It took me a while to brush some of that off.
Yeah.
And I think some of it does lie a little bit. I think most of it's gone now, but some of it does lie in that emotional centre still. It's never fully kind of wiped out, I'm afraid. And then after that, about 2 months later, I had a health scare. And I'm really happy to share this. It's weird because it's quite difficult sharing it one-to-one, but it's actually good sharing it in these kind of contexts, and I hope people can get some sort of value from it. So I had an issue with one of my testes, a kind of lump, or not lump. It was more of an uncomfortable feeling. I couldn't feel a lump. Yeah. I thought feel it, but there wasn't nothing. But it felt uncomfortable. It was weird. That's all I can say. So I went to the doctors first, pretty useless actually. I'm not saying all women doctors use it, but she was a woman and she didn't seem to quite get it. She just was like, oh, I don't really know what that is, you know. Right. I think, I'm sure she even said paracetamol. And I thought, that's ridiculous. You knew that wasn't quite right. But I left
again,
it at
that's
that.
another podcast.
Yeah, that was a strange one. And then, to be fair, I went back a couple of months later, and it was a fella this time. And to be fair, not again saying all fella, bloke doctors are great either, but he straight away took it serious and said it could be this, or we need to have a little look at this. We'll get you an ultrasound. Don't worry, whatever it is, we'll sort it. Oh, thanks.
So instantly you felt relieved that you were being looked after.
Oh, thanks, Doc. You know, relax a bit. You know, that probably I'm going to be okay. You know. So I went for an ultrasound. I don't know if you ever had ultrasounds before. While the ultrasound team can't give you the full diagnosis, usually you get an idea if it's something. If
they're looking at it.
Yeah, you have an idea. Because I had ultrasounds before now. You're absolutely fine, fella, off you go. Yeah. They were silent. And I thought, oh, fuck. That's probably the first time I thought, maybe there is something, you know. Yeah. And I went to see the specialist, I can't remember the client, not the clinic, was the consultant. And they said, you know, we think we've seen something there. It could be malignant, it could be benign, we don't know. So it's up to you. We could monitor it for a while, or we could operate, remove, you know. And I was like, not sure. But we're gonna send you to our University College in London. Top guys, to be fair, absolutely brilliant. And so I went to see the consultant. She roughly said the same thing. But she almost reminded me a bit of me in the sense of she's very analytical. She's brilliant at her job. Her diagnosis was spot on, exactly what it is, how it grows, what it could be. Yeah. Everything was spot on. But she had no emotions whatsoever. So she's telling me about what needs to be done and the process. I'm like, okay, you know, it's a bit weird, but okay, I can handle it. But then she was also saying, and this is kind of funny, but incredibly serious and very masculine. She was saying, oh, you know, we've got to do this operation, but if things go wrong, we can replace it with a plastic testes.
Sorry.
And I was like...
It's not quite the same.
Yeah. So I was like, you know, and at that point, I was like, I understand, yeah. And I'm going... Sorry, you've got to slow down. What did you just say? And he said, oh no, I don't think it's going to come to that, you know what I mean?
What bring it up then?
You know, so well, that's okay then, isn't it? You know, so I had the operation, it was a success, it was actually benign, which makes you sometimes think, should I have done it, I should have left it, you know, whatever, but you don't know.
You can't.
It's probably a safer bet, to be honest. And really all I want to share, particularly with the guys, is not just my experience, it's the importance, and this is very similar to prostate cancer as well, particularly at our age, is the importance of getting these things checked.
Us men don't either, do we?
Yeah, and we don't. And with both of them cancers, the great news is, if you catch them early, 99% success rate. 99, not 93, not 92, 99% success rate. If you leave it for too long, if you don't check them areas, and look, most guys check them areas now and again anyway, if you don't check them areas and you let it go too far, then you've got a real serious problem. So that is prostate cancer, for example, in our 30s, it's about one in about 3,500. In our 50s, you're down to about 1 in 350. So it's about 10 times more likely.
Odds are more likely.
Yeah, but if you catch it early, it's a really simple treatment. So, guys, that's certainly my learning point for the day.
And so, at that point, that's 4 big moments in your life, effectively, that's led to a time.
Yeah.
How are you at that time then?
So, I'm really struggling, and again, when I say really struggling, probably more obvious now, whereas before it's kind of the bloke struggle. I know I'm struggling, maybe some people close to you might recognise it, but most people still think he's probably
He'll be all right.
He's okay.
Yeah.
He's okay. And that's where I probably needed some support myself, and work were very good actually. You know, there's occupational support, and I did a bit of cognitive behavioural work. Which I'd actually taught loads of people I'd worked for probation. So I thought, well, I knew it's quite a good theory, so let me try it for myself. And it was really helpful. And what it made me realise, though, particularly when you start explaining or talking to other men who then have gone through the similar process, is as a middle-aged man, or a man in general, but middle-aged in this particular case, we all need a bit of support sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's where the integrated martial arts come in, because I started to then put two and two together to thinking, well, look, I'm doing this program. Martial arts has been doing well-being for martial arts has well-being within it for the last 3,000 years. It's a new subject in the West, but right from the dawn of martial arts, they've had well-being aspects to it. For soldiers that went to war, how they would relax and prepare back for war again when they came. So there's always been that sort of within the martial arts. So that was probably the first eureka moment where I thought I could design something and develop a particular program that helps middle-aged men manage these health risks and some of these challenges around things like bereavement and stuff like that. Because if you put it simply, if we're in our 40s, 50s and 60s as middle-aged men, then you guarantee our parents, our uncles, our grandparents are 70, 80, 90, 100, whatever, if they're fortunate enough to live that long. So bereavement is kind of a normal thing when you're a middle-aged guy, I'm afraid. I know it's not much fun.
And it's normally really
but
close
it's
people
reality.
as well.
Yeah, of course it is, you know. So that is something that's where the holistic nature comes in, because yes, I'm doing my martial arts. Yes, you could be fit, big muscles, flat stomach, whatever. That's great. But it's the wider emotional resilience, managing bereavement, managing your mental health, managing the health challenges that you all of a sudden when you're younger didn't even think was ever possible, which now as a middle-aged man is reality. Yeah. You know, if I just touched on prostate cancer and testicular cancer. It's exactly the same for heart attacks and strokes. Exactly the same. If you make lifestyle changes consistently over a period of time, you can reduce the risk of heart attacks and strokes by up to 90%.
Why didn't anyone tell me that?
It's not too late.
It is. I've had 7 heart attacks.
Right, yes, well there you go. And is that because of your lifestyle previously, or is it a genetic thing?
No, it's not genetic. I think lifestyle could play a part, but I'm still not the healthiest of eaters.
Yeah, sure.
I used to drink Coca-Cola like 10, 12 cans a day, like an alcoholic would do 12 beers.
Yeah.
I would do 12 cans.
Yeah, sure.
And the sugar and the caffeine and everything else. And I contracted COVID actually.
Right.
And the COVID triggered the heart condition.
Yes.
And now I'm dilated cardiomyopathy. I've had 7 heart attacks. I've got a defib attached to my heart now. I'm in heart failure right this second, and I'm waiting surgery.
Really?
Yeah.
What for what would be
For
the
an
surgery?
ablation.
Right, okay.
So as they go in through my groin and burn the fatty tissue away from my heart. I've had 3 already, they failed. So I'm having the 4th one in the Royal Brompton very soon.
Sure, that's amazing.
But, you know, maybe what I'm trying to say is maybe if I focus my mind on men's holistical health a bit more and healthy my lifestyle up a bit, the chances of having another heart attack.
I would think so. I really would. Yeah, and we've got. I know we've got a heart health ebook online. So I don't know if you've ever checked my website. Please do. I think you might have to leave your name and email at the most, but there's some really good heart health tips as well that could maybe benefit you in the longer term as well.
What's the name of your business, Dave? Because
so it's an integrated martial arts method. And my website is davefergusoncoach.com. And I'm on all over Google
LinkedIn
Business and LinkedIn, Insta, TikTok, Facebook.
Yeah. He's on my Facebook, just click on him.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
everybody knows Adrian.
So it should be easy to find, absolutely. It should be easy to find from there. And there's lots and lots of free stuff up there.
And there's lots more information about what more you do and what more you offer and your services.
Absolutely,
Is business going really well? Are you earning a crust from it?
It's
obviously because you've come away from the public sector now, so you've got to be earning some money.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's another revolutionary change. leaving a pretty solid civil service role with a solid wage, with a solid.
Do you think you needed to do that for you?
100%.
So, although you've started
100%.
this movement or foundation or whatever you want to call it, effectively, how you approach it, do you not feel that this really started about yourself first?
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was about you.
100%.
That's why we've started this.
100%.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
The fact that it's evolved like this is a massive bonus. But this was all about us just sitting there one day and going, "Do you know what? Why don't we just start a podcast?" And again, that napkin moment or that moment where you do eureka moment.
Yeah. Where I just shared the lesson.
Us.
Yeah.
It's about us.
100%, because that's why I wanted to share them traumatic moments, because there is a positive side to it in the end.
Yes.
And I suppose it's a difficult one, because in some ways you think, oh, it's a bit hard sometimes to go through that. But then do you have to go through them moments to be where you are now? Probably. I think you probably do.
Again, it's like mental health. We are all in it.
Yeah.
It's difficult to talk about prostate or testicular cancer or being in that moment, but we're all in it.
Yeah, of course.
It's not a secret. It's not a taboo as such. We're all going to face these. So why would we not share these?
Yeah, 100%.
To make ourselves more experienced and understanding, because then you're not as scared of what you're going to face.
No.
You're doing it together, effectively.
That's right.
And then we rise above in turbulent times.
Ah, yeah.
Dave, I could, honest to God, we've done some great podcasts, and sometimes we struggle to get a conversation out of somebody. But today's podcast has been really eye-opening for me, and I know Adrian quite well, and I reckon it's been eye-opening for him as well. I do want to finish on something that is close to your heart. It's close to Adrian's heart, actually, because he played in last year's.
That's right, yeah.
I don't think he did very well, if I remember rightly.
I got a couple of goals, I think.
It was all ran by that youngster, Delroyce.
Yes, yeah, Kate.
Yeah. But
shame you can't play this year, actually.
You're hosting.
Gutted.
You hosted last year a charity football tournament, which we've just touched on, that you both played in, and it was held at the Baldock Park down in Baldock. It was quite successful. There was quite a few people there. There was some nice food and stuff. Can you tell me why you set that up and what it's for? And are you doing one this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more than happy to share that. It's quite exciting now. It's going to be the second year now, as you've touched upon. And I just want to tell you maybe a little bit about who the tournament's actually named after. So I used to play football in, where are we now? So probably late 80s, early 90s. And we used to play the North Hearts League for a team called Ellis Lions. And our skipper, James Smith, who the tournament's named after, he regrettably passed, I've got to make sure I get this right, late 2022, I believe, or early 2023.
What did he pass up to?
Brain tumour. Yeah. And he was as fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, I remember him.
Strong as an ox. He put us to shame, And I think there's probably a bit of redemption there for me, actually, if I'm honest with you, because he would turn up to the games and he would have done his training for the week, and he was that classic bald head guy that was really solid and strong and really fit. Yeah, he lived for it. He was very dynamic, He was big enough to be a big guy, but small enough to still be quick and sharp as well, And us guys would turn up flipping wrecked from the night before, 20 drinks, or half a spliff hanging out your mouth, and it's just completely ridiculous. And I think we probably let him down a little bit, actually. So when he passed, and I heard that he passed, the IMA just sort of got off the ground. And I wanted to get back into a bit of football. And I knew a few guys had played football. And I knew a few other guys who wanted to get back into football. But they said they couldn't. They'd put on too much weight, and their knees had gone, and their back. And
most of them are in their 50s.
Yeah, their 40s, 50s, 60s, even a couple.
Why did you point to Adrian when you said
just emphasising, not a point, just like an emphasising sort of thing. Yeah, so that, again, it just sort of come to me. I thought, why don't we arrange a tournament? I thought it might be like almost walking football at the beginning. Why didn't we arrange a tournament in his name? And I think he'd have liked that. He kind of rated himself to some extent, and rightfully so. He's a great guy. And I think to have a tournament named after him, I think he'd bloody love that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I have to say. So, I just started to arrange that because I'd probably missed a little bit of civil service, the organisational side of things. I just talked about being this policy and leading this policy, the team of people, and getting this policy relief and impacting X amount of thousands of people. I probably missed a bit of that. So I thought I could do this more of a community type organisation. We don't make any money from it at all. Even you talked about the Caribbean food last time. The lady didn't charge us a penny coming from Birmingham, which is just amazing. Both people would have charged $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever for that, something like that.
Was you giving the food away? I didn't eat last time.
I had a little bit.
No, I think she charged X amount for the dish. But even then, she said that she'd only charge, for the first 100, and then after that, she would give to the same brain tumour cancer charity. Sorry, which I just thought fantastic. It's amazing. There are people out there who really are willing to help and things like that. So as you said, we were at the Baldock Recreation Park, and this year we're stepping it up. We've got almost double the amount of teams. We'll be live on the 28th of June around 11 p.m. We're looking to kick off, and it'll be at Letchworth Garden City Eagles home ground.
11 a.m.
Yeah, 11 a.m. Yeah, we're looking to kick off. Big shout out to Simon, the chairman, and my old mate Ed for helping us to facilitate that.
And Eagles is a big place as well.
Yeah, so we're going to use 7-a-side. Squads of like 15 because we need quite a lot of subs just in case. Although I think the injuries weren't too bad. I know a lot of people struggled the next day.
Mine was I just started cramping up.
Do
you know mine? I watched almost every game last year, and my man of the tournament had to be Sanj in goal.
I love that. I wish you didn't say that.
The guy could
bloody hell.
Do you know, Sam?
Yeah.
You know what that's going to do now? Giving him a shout out. Like
Sanj, you owe me 20 quid, all right?
Yeah, he'd love that. But no, he is a good, particularly in the sort of 7-a-side,
He was quality.
But he is a good keeper, to be fair. Great shot stopper, to be honest.
Who won last year?
So I don't really want to say that. We finish it? So that's Hitchin Reds. Yeah, it was really intense.
It did get intense. I thought it was going to be a punch-up.
We are old school rivals, really.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I didn't probably expect that level of intenseness. I mean, I love the competition. James is a strong competitor.
Yeah,
and I like that.
Strong and fair.
Maybe there was a couple of little bits, maybe went a little too far. We'll probably tighten up the rules a little bit this year as well. There's no slide tackles, for example, and that sort of stops a few things. Especially
when you're 50 years
you're
old.
tired, the last 20 minutes, your third game, them slide tackles are desperate. So Hitchin Reds, they're worthy winners, to be fair. Anyone who still wants to get involved, whether you want to play, you want to be part of a team, you just want to come and support, still more than welcome. Still get in touch with me or one of the other teams or whatever. So people are still welcome.
Have we got Curry again?
No. So I'm completely devastated actually, because we did actually originally advertise that, but the same lady had double booked. So she was going to actually still provide the food, and some of my family actually members, I think I told you earlier on, coming from Manchester in a week, were going to help support us, but she couldn't double up. So we have got refreshments provided by the actual club.
Unless there's someone out there today.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite tight, but yeah, if anyone wants to take that opportunity up and wants to get in touch with us, then please do. But yeah, we're a little bit gutted about that. There will be refreshments there on the day, but maybe not quite as sweet as some of that food from last time, I'm afraid.
Okay. Anything else?
No, again, it's been an absolute honour and a privilege, and I've learned, I've known you for many years, bruv. Do you know what I mean?
Have you learned anything tonight that you didn't already
massively. Well, obviously. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I would want. Yeah, that's what we talked about.
And if anything,
fantastic.
I'm probably going to reach out to Dave personally off after this, and maybe look to get a bit of help for myself. To be fair, I'm sure. And I think anyone out there should be doing that as well.
Do you know what? This is our 7th podcast, and I just don't want to stop it. I don't want to end it here.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But I think we've covered everything.
I think so, yeah.
I think we now know, and people that watch this, some of your even family might know more about you today after watching this. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely appreciate it. Good
really
man.
do.
Yeah, do. We also, obviously, we always finish, like we discussed before, we always like to give the viewers or anyone that's watching or anyone that would see it after a message of, if you're struggling, if you're not feeling great, if you feel like you are in such a bad place, what would your advice be? What have got you through moments of real toughness what would you, look at the camera and tell people what has helped you and what can help them?
I think. To be fair, I'd already maybe touched on it earlier on. I look at mental health as a continuum. And, when I hear people say, oh, do this, do that, and you are going to, that's the end of your mental health. Mental health is lows, are highs, are all the bits in between. And we will always have lows at some point. And for me, the key is just to try and readdress the balance, even if it's one small step at a time. So even if you are feeling low and you're really struggling, even if you could just breathe for 5 seconds, 5 shallow breaths, bit by bit, and that will relax your organs and will relax some of your temperors and stuff going on in your head. Even if it's only a slight bit and it's a slight ease up for a moment, that moment can then be built onto a second moment the following day.
Thanks, Dave. Myself and Adrian would really like to make a big shout out to FB Chain, our podcast sponsor, and All Round Good Eggs. You can find them down at Works Road, Letchworth, for all your chain requirements.
Really appreciate all the new equipment that's come from them.
Great setup, guys.
This isn't about obviously money, but obviously every movement, everything needs to be funded, and we also thank Jackman's Community Centre for letting us use their facilities. Everyone is being so good.
They have indeed, and we've had lots of messages reached out, and I think we've got another 6 or 7 podcasts lined up.
Oh, fantastic! I'll be watching.
So I've been Shane, he's been Adrian, and this man's been
Dave.
Thank you very much. Tune in next time.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Fantastic! It's really great.
No.
Amazing.
What's he saying? Oh no,
My phone's gone off.
Oh.
Dead battery.
Oh, you're joking.
When?
I have no idea.
Do you know? And what was that for? That was the Instagram one?
Instagram.
Yeah. Oh, no.